Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Robert Stickle. I am also joined by my colleague Richard Evans. Richard will be today's presenter and will discuss the topic of driving digital transformation through the Agile PMO. This webinar is the third in a recent series of Agile webinars, so if you enjoyed today's video, feel free to watch the others on our channel and look towards the next installment, which we'll be releasing soon. And as always, I hope that today's presentation grants you some insight into the world of project and portfolio management and gets you excited for the new developments happening within the industry and here at OnePlan. Thank you again. I will now turn the presentation over to Richard.
All right, thanks, Robert. Hi, everyone. This is Richard. Topic today is the Agile PMO. Maybe you already have a PMO and it's in need of some transformation to meet the needs of modern business, or perhaps you're feeling some pain and think it might be worth considering this function. I'm going to cover what is a modern high-value portfolio management office. What does that look like compared to previous incarnations of portfolio management offices? And out of the hundreds of things you could possibly do to transform and add value, I'll try to boil it down to a dozen or so things that I think are high value and high impact for the modern portfolio office. Okay, so here's a big question. What if you have an organization that isn't agile? Can you still have an agile PMO? Yes, the answer is yes. So I would say most organizations today are what we call adaptive, where you have perhaps some burgeoning agile methods and enthusiasm growing. You still have maybe a mix of other styles of working, ranging from very unstructured to perhaps old-fashioned waterfall. That's very common, and also there's an argument that says that's fine, because having a mix of methods can be supported by modern tools and technology. Some may argue that one way of working only means that you're sort of stifling innovation because you're not exploring new ways of doing things. But equally, I personally think agile organizations are great. So I'm equally supportive of organizations that are really driving agile transformation across the board. But the key thing there is what I'm talking about here works whether you consider yourselves an agile organization or you're heading that way, or whether you're not. So this works, I think, in a couple of scenarios. All right, so again, whether you already have a PMO or whether you're considering how this could add value and solve some problems for you, the topic really, the reason we're talking about this, it's all about, in modern terms, velocity and having an economic focus. So there's a whole range of different types of PMOs. But let's just stand back a second and say, well, why even have one in the first place? So when you think about an enterprise, it has objectives and it has strategies. And how you execute those objectives and strategies is through things like work and projects and products and portfolios of stuff. And so really what this comes down to is that's such an important set of things that they require support, help, and governance. Don't leave them to chance to deliver value. So having some kind of PMO structure is really all about good investment management. You're managing a portfolio of work in order to achieve business outcomes. So on the scale of PMOs through the years, there's a few types, but the one that's fairly common and maligned is the visibility and compliance PMO, where you often end up with a situation where the PMO is all about ensuring compliance with process and really doing reporting. And that has to stop in the modern era, because we're so highly focused on moving quickly, on innovation, on delivering results, on optimizing your spend, having an economic focus. That's just not going to work today. You have to change away from that. So an Agile PMO is more focused on things like seeing the organization's work as an investment portfolio, getting the most out of that, and also reducing waste, which is a good lean term. So waste in this space might mean projects or products are always over budget or over time. It might mean that we're not able to achieve as much as we like, or get things to market on time. There's all kinds of manifestations of waste. I'm going to use let's just get into some practicalities of things that you can work on to build a high value PMO. What does that look like, and what are some of the things to help you structure a high value PMO to add more value to your products and work across the organization? So I'm going to borrow a couple of frameworks here from Scaled Agile, and specifically Lean Portfolio Management. But again, this framework works whether you're consider yourselves agile or not. And in fact, if the term agile is problematic, don't call yourself an agile portfolio management officer. Just remove the term altogether. I found that in some organizations that's not a good term. In others, it is. But these frameworks I found are really helpful whether you are in what I mentioned is an adaptive situation today, or whether you are in a true agile mode. So this one from LPM, nice and simple to get you started. Lean portfolio management, a framework we can borrow from, says there's really three elements. Keep it simple to PMO involvement. So strategy and investment management. That's where the enterprise is setting objectives and budgets and so on. That's not fully the domain of the PMO, but the PMO has a role to play in that. So that's really an executive-led thing, but there is still opportunity for involvement to help support and shape that. Then you have portfolio governance, which is about periodic decision-making on the portfolio. PMO should be a bit more involved in that and organizing stakeholders around that. And then the third spoke, portfolio operations, is your day-to-day processes and tools for managing work. And the PMO should be even more actively working in that space too. So here's some things I think are high value and high impact to think about when gearing up as a PMO for the modern era. So the first thing is when it comes to the strategy and investment quadrant only. So this is the one that's driven by executives, but the PMO has a role in. One thing that I see as really important to the future of organizations in general, and I'm seeing this play out today, is this growth of the concept of value streams, where instead of organizing and funding projects, you start to look at opportunities to organize teams around major value streams. And this is worth some research and reading up on. I'm sure you've probably already heard of this and have some experience of this. It's well worth a deep dive. I won't cover it in depth here. We can do another webinar just focused on this, but value streams, not only value streams create a very customer-centric way of doing things, they also really help solve resource capacity challenges, which I know everybody suffers from, because you in your organization might do hundreds of projects each year. If you are funding projects and creating project teams each time you kick off a new project, that's a really complex set of variables and interdependencies. And the knock-on effect of trying to assemble and disassemble project teams, especially when you have hundreds of projects going on, or maybe thousands even, is you rapidly lose control over dates and budgets, and everything ends up impacting. When one thing goes late or over budget, it impacts everything else. It's also bad for people because people are constantly being shuffled around. Value stream thinking goes like this: you analyze what are the major customer-focused workflows in your organization that are unique to you that you're supporting. And these are the steps, the series of steps taken to deliver a product or a service to a customer that benefits them and also benefits you as the organization economically. It's your major product and service workflows. It's how your customers would describe your organization. If you said to one of your customers, what do you think are the 3 or 4 things that we do? They're likely to look like value streams. Again, topic for another discussion, another day's discussion. But if you can roll up all of your work and your projects and your teams into value streams, it's going to really help with the complexities of not only delivering value to customers in an optimal way, it's really going to help with your internal operational considerations for resourcing. All right, another thing that the modern PMO should be doing, helping the shift away from annual planning. Most organizations, I would wager today, are still doing annual planning. A lot of the ones I work with recognize that there's issues with that in the modern economy because things change much more rapidly than annually today. And that can be for all kinds of reasons. Technology is one, but world events, and there are many things, competition, many things that are making annual planning look too slow and too inefficient and unable to react to change. So lean methods say we should ideally be striving for a 6-monthly cycle for adjusting budgets and strategies slightly with our executive audience. That's a 6-monthly cycle. And then in addition, we should be doing a quarterly review and update of our work portfolio, projects and products and so on. So quarterly reviews and adjustments on the work we're investing in. That implies the ability through your tools and data strategy to be able to see what the work is happening in its entirety. That's not easy, but that's a quarterly rolling planning cycle with a 6-monthly budget and strategy cycle. You need to start that now if you haven't already. And then finally, there's another thing that is a good agile practice, which the PMO, I think, can add a lot of value to, which is orchestrating participatory budgeting. Again, topic for another day, but participatory budgeting, or any version of it, because everyone does this slightly differently, is a way to get teams together to propose and discuss their proposed investments in initiatives and products and projects and epics and so on. And that's an event that should be going on every 6 months. Again, the PMO can help orchestrate that. It's a great way to add value. All right, now governance, on the governance side, so here we're looking at a bit more PMO involvement on a periodic basis. So what are some high value, high impact things here? So one is introducing lean business cases, I think. So a lot of investment decision making historically has been based on a lot of, well, two scenarios, I guess. One is it's been based on not much information at all and very sketchy information around business cases, or very often it's the opposite. We have 100-page long business cases with NPV and IRR and all kinds of things in there. What we're looking for is a happy medium, so that a business case doesn't take months to develop, doesn't take weeks to read. It's something that can be developed and reviewed often, and that's the key to all of this in the modern PMO is have processes that can be repeated frequently. And a lean business case, if you look up the template for that, it's about a 3-page business case, nice and easy, and it's focused on proving out hypotheses, and your whole project workflow should support a review and testing out of hypotheses as you go. But look up lean business case. It's a nice template to get you started on this topic. Another one the PMO should be focused on now is data-driven decisions. That's comes down to your tooling and data strategy. You're going to need good tools and data. More on that in a minute. And then the other big thing I think that is very modern and relevant is this idea of sequencing. So historically, PMOs and organizations talk a lot about prioritization and prioritizing ideas and proposals for work coming in. Prioritization is a means to an end, and that end is actually what's the right sequence of things to do. What should I do first, second, and third? And there's much better options for doing that, but I would say than there used to be. For example, there's the weighted shortest job first approach, which is working pretty well as a means to do prioritization and sequencing often, because it's a quick hit and you can repeat it to keep it up to date and accurate. But yes, modern PMO should be focused on that important role of sequencing. All right, and operations, portfolio operations. We have embrace adaptive for sure. I mentioned that before. If you're going full on agile across the enterprise, that's great. I love that. But there's no harm in embracing different methods and tools, because that ecosystem will create competition and your ability to compare what's working well and what's not. And so having diversity or variety can often be a good thing. And modern technologies for your PMO can support that. Another big focus for PMOs, I see this happening today very effectively, is to shift thinking and terminology and roles and training to products from projects. So when you think about a project, most projects really do one of two things. They either create something brand new, create a new thing, which you could argue is a product that might last for quite some years, or a project often is enhancing or is somehow related to an existing product, I would argue that the majority of what we call projects today are related ultimately to a product. Now, you may call a product, a product may look like a service. Some of these products are for customers, like a traditional product. Some are maybe for internal customers only. Either way, I would wager that all of your projects, or at least the majority of your projects, can roll up to products. They somehow are creating new ones, or updating, or somehow taking action on an existing product. And product management generally is a whole way of organizing people and establishing roles. So one thing the PMO can be central to is looking, if you are still in a project mode, there's definitely benefit to exploring how the PMO can help recalibrate existing project roles and turn, for example, project managers into either product owners or scrum masters and so on, because the slight change in roles and behavior from project management to product ownership or scrum master skills, those are going to be more aligned with the modern concepts of customer centricity and velocity. And ultimately, now is the time to look at your tool strategy. So if we have aspirations to modernize and add value and reduce waste in the organization and optimize investments, then your tooling strategy is going to be critical. It's one of your, having data on projects is one of your guardrails, allowing teams to be autonomous and move quickly and do the right thing. Having data and visibility, just like having budget constraints, a really important guardrail, so that you can be confident people are doing the right things and we're not creating waste or churn or repeating things unnecessarily. One other thing, borrowed from the Lean Portfolio Framework, is a typical process flow. So let's just finally here just have a quick run through the life cycle of a portfolio from soup to nuts and just look at those opportunities for the Agile PMO to add value. So this is the Lean Portfolio Framework, begins with strategy and funding. You go through funnel, which is idea intake, analyze, which is review and prioritization and sequencing, backlog to control work in progress, implement to manage project execution. And if that is a framework for the life cycle of a project idea, I think it's a very good one actually, and works whether you're doing Agile or not. Let's just walk through how a PMO can be adding value throughout this life cycle. And again, hundreds of things you could do. I'm just going to pull out half a dozen things here. So one is supporting strategy and funding. Modern tooling allows you to capture objectives and strategies in your portfolio management system. I think that's really important, so you can tie back all of your work, your products, your projects, your epics, tie it all back to those objectives. So those should be recorded, captured as data. We should be able to tie those back. The other thing is, again, a good tool strategy thing is being able to create those visualizations, those roadmaps of all of the work in progress and all of the work being proposed. That concept of being able to zoom out and see on a roadmap all of our work. That's going to be so important to those governance things every 6 months and every quarter, like I said earlier. The funnel, I would say PMO should be overseeing the funnel. Again, that should be technology enabled. Key part here is anybody in the organization, in the modern organization, should be able to put in an idea or request. That shouldn't be limited to just a few people. Modern thinking is being borne out by the results, which is the bigger the sample of ideas you can capture, if you've got a way to filter them down, the higher the quality of the small sample you select and invest in at the end. So make that inclusive. Analyze. This step in the process, we're building out business cases. This is where you can introduce your lean business case, perhaps. And this is where sequencing happens. So if we can determine the feasibility, viability, and desirability of an idea in our analyze stage through our process, through our tools, the end game here is to sequence things so we're pretty clear on what we're going to do next and what's unlikely to be funded for quite some time, but because it's not clearly adding value at this moment. Backlog. This is a step that a lot of people overlook, but the modern PMO I recommend should be thinking about introducing this process step of backlog, because I think most problems in portfolio management and in project management come about through there being simply too much work or nobody quite really understanding how much work the teams can do. And it affects everything, because when you have too much work in the system or poor understanding of how much you can take on, everything and everyone suffers. The idea of a backlog is to say, okay, we like your business case. This looks feasible, desirable, viable. So it goes into the backlog and we start on it when the teams are ready to start. It's to avoid that situation where people immediately start spending money on something once it's approved and you get 100 projects all starting at the beginning of the financial year. All right, and then modern PMO, Agile PMO for implementation. What are we doing there? We're executing projects. It's all very reliant on good data as well as good people. I mentioned earlier that some of these Agile concepts like product ownership and Scrum master roles, all of these things will help with the customer centricity and the velocity of execution. Technology definitely helps. My vision, our vision, and one plan for this set of tools and data is that you should be able to have different work management tools for different scenarios, happily coexisting and rolling into your view all up of what's happening in the enterprise. And that includes not only different project methods and tools, that also includes being able to bring in other important data, most importantly perhaps cost data, because everything the modern Agile PMO should be doing should have an economic focus. And that's our closed loop. So the all that data flowing out of execution through our modern tools ecosystem ultimately feeds those roadmaps and that view of what's everybody working on, what's coming through the pipeline, which fuels our roadmap discussions and our quarterly rolling planning and governance at the executive level. All right, good. I have come to the end of this, 30 minutes in. That's what I was hoping to do, so that's good. So just to recap, the Agile Portfolio Management Office, things I ran through there, all relevant whether you are pure Agile heading that way or whether you're happy to live in this adaptive state of being a mix of methods. The lean portfolio framework there gives you some real guidance on how to reconstruct and reinvent the modern PMO to add value. That's all. Thanks very much, everybody.